In recent years, racing shoes have been primarily associated with models such as the Nike Alphafly and Adidas Adios Pro. These are models whose soles are very close to the World Athletics limit of 40mm thickness. More classic shoes, which would not have surprised anyone a few years ago, have somewhat fallen into the shadows. However, Nike decided to somewhat merge these two worlds. They aimed to create shoes that would utilize the latest technologies while having a thinner sole and a shape reminiscent of track spikes. Thus, the Nike Streakfly 2 was born.
Yeah, I'm overzealous when I'm thinking about the cash flow. I never had no handouts, just came natural. I've been testing so much, all these restless nights, all these different situations that I've been through. I seen pain.
Let's start with what these shoes were designed for. The Nike Streakfly 2 is an ultralight racing shoe primarily intended for short distances, 5 and 10K, although in my opinion they are best suited for even shorter, intense segments. They are definitely not shoes for beginners. Their construction demands good running technique and quite a fast leg turnover. But before discussing how they run, the technical details. The upper is an ultralight racing mesh devoid of any structure. It is incredibly breathable and almost transparent, providing excellent ventilation but practically no lateral support. The heel counter is only slightly reinforced, lined inside with a thin plush strip of material that gently wraps the heel and increases comfort. The lacing is standard, although the laces are very thin and rather average in quality. The tips fell off after just a few training sessions. The tongue is ultra thin, not integrated with the upper, making it easy to fold and shift during the run. The insole is glued to the inside of the shoe, so it cannot be removed or replaced. And the midsole consists of 2 layers of ZoomX foam, the same one that we know from Nike's top-tier shoes. Between them is a flyplate carbon plate, responsible for stiffness and quick rebound. Under the heel there is 32mm of foam, under the midfoot 28mm of foam. It gives us a 4mm drop, which combined with the low weight provides very dynamic and direct sensations. The outsole has substantial rubber coverage under the midfoot with a flat, low tread providing good traction on asphalt. Under the heel there are only 2 small pieces of rubber and the middle part of the sole is completely exposed, revealing the characteristic cutout, exposing the carbon plate. The Nike Streakfly 2 in a reference size of 42 EU weighs just 133 grams, and in my size 45 EU or 11 US it's only 145 grams. Absolute lightness and a pure racing level. The sizing is standard, as in most brands 45 EU or 11 US fits me perfectly. Let's move on to my running impressions and the general pros and cons of the Nike Streakfly 2. The first advantage is unmistakable once you put on these shoes, and that is their weight. I have never had such light running shoes, well, maybe except for spikes, but that's another story. In my size 45 EU, it's 145 grams, incredibly little, and you definitely feel it during the run, or rather, you don't feel it because it feels like you're not wearing shoes at all. Another big plus is, unsurprisingly, the dynamics. The ZoomX foam combined with the carbon plate offers a lot. Every step feels like a light bounce on a trampoline. However, considering the shoe's profile, such positive sensations will only come to runners who land on the midfoot or toes. Heel strikers won't find what they are looking for here. If I had to compare the running experience in the Streakfly 2 to something, it would be somewhat akin to more adapted track spikes for the average person. It's very dynamic, acceleration is very easy, but at the same time the run is much more demanding on the muscles. But more on that in the cons section. The Streakfly 2 also boasts quite decent traction, especially for this type of shoe. Even on wet asphalt my feet didn't slip, and taking sharp turns without braking wasn't a problem. The front part of the shoe is abundantly covered with rubber and the tread isn't super flat, which definitely helps. The rear part of the shoe has 2 small pieces of rubber, but honestly they might as well not be there. The heel won't have prolonged contact with the ground anyway. What surprised me about the Nike Streakfly 2 is the comfort. For racing shoes, it's at least decent here. The upper fits well to the foot, and considering how light the material is, or rather how light these shoes are, you quickly forget you're even wearing them. The soft lining on the heel counter adds a lot to the comfort, providing a cushion-like feel. And what didn't I like? Durability. Yes, these are very fast and light shoes, but that comes at the cost of material durability. I've done almost 100k in this model, and the rubber at the front of the shoe is already a bit worn. The foam itself has a few dents, and quite oddly, the lace tips fell off of one shoe. They are also not very stable shoes, while the traction is decent. Keeping the foot in the right position is already a challenge. No wonder the upper has practically no structure and the sole is optimized for weight minimization, not stability. The very narrow sole under the heel is a perfect example of this. And the last downside, these are not shoes for beginners. They are quite demanding on the muscles. It's said to be racing model for 5 to 10k, but in my opinion, unless you're a runner doing 10k in about 35 minutes or faster, I'd look for something else. In my case, a 5k race in these shoes is a good option, but for a 10k in Berlin where I aimed for sub 40, I felt like it was too much for my muscles. The last 3k were definitely a struggle. Let's take a look at alternatives to the Nike Streakfly 2. These are shoes with a rather specific construction and purpose, so finding an equivalent isn't easy. However, I have two models that I think have similar applications. The first one is the Adidas Takumi Sen 11. The sole is made of Lightstrike Pro foam with fiberglass rods and a low profile. This makes the Takumi Sen great for fast training and races up to 10k. It's very dynamic, but in my opinion, it's a bit firmer than the Streakfly 2. The Takumi Sen cost €200, which is €20 more than Nike's offering. And the second option is the New Balance Super Comp Pacer, but in the first version, the twos have already evolved into racing shoes even for half marathons. The V1 were very similar in character to the Streakfly. Carbon plate, fuel cell foam, great dynamics, but they also are a bit more friendly to heel strikers and beginners. They are currently hard to find, but if you come across them, they are worth considering. The Nike Streakfly 2 is a very good, even great racing shoe for shorter distances, but rather for intermediate runners for whom high speeds are a daily occurrence. They will appreciate the lightness, traction and responsiveness of this model. Slower runners might feel a bit lost here, and due to the shoe's construction they could even injure themselves. For me, someone who runs a 5k in 19 minutes and 10k just over 40 minutes, this model is a good choice only for the shorter of these distances. And even better for a mile or 3k on the track, but there aren't many such races. If you made it to the end, thanks a lot for watching, give a sub, a thumbs up, and be sure to comment on what you think about these shoes. Also check out my Instagram and TikTok, all the links are in the description. I will see you in the next video. Bye!
Pacino.